What a blessing to be here in person. We welcome you who have joined us online this morning, and we extend a greeting once again to Pan American School, to the students, to the faculty and administrators that are joining us online today. So we're so grateful to have you as well. I preaching a second sermon on the dangers of religious hypocrisy, and specifically today the danger of keeping people or restricting people or closing off people from the kingdom of heaven. You know, when we look at the gospel, there's a little red flag that raises up, and the red flag is that the people that were in most conflict with Jesus, the people who confronted and were most critical of Jesus, were the most religious people of the day. They were the ones that took it to Jesus, man. They were after Jesus. And one of the main criticisms that they had of Jesus was the company that he kept, those with whom he had association. And what we know is that when we read about Jesus, Jesus was associated with sinners. Jesus was associated with the ceremonially unclean. He went to the home and had supper with tax collectors. That Jesus associated with the sick, and Jesus associated with the poor, and Jesus associated with Samaritans and with Gentiles. And so this got him into tremendous trouble with the religious people of the day. And I just want to propose this to you today. I want to propose that it's better if we are known for what we are becoming than it is to be known for what we don't do. Amen? Y'all hear that? It is better that we are known for what we are becoming as followers of Jesus than to be known for what we don't do. Because we know that churches, we know that religious groups are often known for what they don't do. In fact, when I became a Christian, I was associated with the 5 pillars of don't do's. Okay, here were the don't do's. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't dance. Don't. Write that down. Now I got to start over. Don't smoke. Don't drink. We got the dance down. Don't dance. Don't chew. And don't date girls that do. Now, those were the 5 pillars of don'ts. Don't do those things, right? And what I want to tell you is that eliminated most everybody around me. When I became a Christian, everybody, I grew up in Alabama in a time when everybody smoked. My parents were chain smokers. People all around us, they drank. Well, I didn't dance because it just didn't look good. I'm going to tell you, that 70s thing was going on. I looked like I was having a seizure, and it just doesn't look good. Don't chew or date girls that do. We're often known for what we don't do, and the list could be much longer than that. And what we end up doing often is saying to outsiders, we don't want you. You're not welcome here. We'd say the church is not the building, but the building is the place where the church meets. And when we meet, we often will communicate to people that there are certain people that we don't want. And they've learned that by conversations, right? There's certain people that we don't want. At least it can be what is communicated by what we don't do. And so there are certain people we may be communicating to them, we really don't want you here. And then what I want to tell you is when we're known for the don'ts, what we end up doing is we begin to create a context for deception. So what we do is focus on behavioral modification. In other words, we begin with the don'ts. With the don'ts, we start telling people, well, you don't do this. And so what we do is we end up seeking to change the behavior or change the belief. But that does not mean that it changes the nature of the person. So what happens eventually is that people end up hiding things. They end up sort of, cover up. It's in stealth, kind of thing. We start hiding things. So let me say it like this, and then let's see what kind of reaction you give me. Baptist, I'll just say Baptist. Baptists don't smoke, don't drink, don't dance, don't chew, or date girls that do. So what happens is we end up creating a system by which we seek to please others rather than seeking to be pleasing to God. We start to set up a system of things that we say, well, these are things that we don't do. And because we don't do those things, let's say, at least around each other, then in the presence of each other, we're all right. We're okay. And this is some of the things that Jesus is encountering with the most religious people of his day. People that had come up with a system by which they could measure their own success and their own goodness and their own rightness by the failings or the beliefs or the behaviors of others. And they just went sideways with Jesus because he broke all the rules and he hung out with people that he shouldn't be hanging out with. That brings us to our text today. I want you to locate this passage in Luke chapter 7. We're going to begin with verse 36. And we have here a contrast between a religious man and a sinful woman. A religious man, a sinful woman in this passage. And what it will do is help us to unmask religious hypocrisy. Because what is that? What does that look like? And it brings us to the setting in verse 36. The setting. When one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him, he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. So there was a banquet, and a banquet was generally held out on the patio or the porch. It was close to the road so that people passing by, they could actually see inside. They could see who was participating, who the guest was in attendance. They could see that. It was very visible. People could come in and out. And what we're told is that one of them was the Pharisee, that Jesus was invited to the home of a Pharisee. Verse 40 tells us that his name was Simon. And a Pharisee was the poster child of what it meant to be right with God. If you looked up righteousness in the dictionary, you would find the picture of a Pharisee. Pharisees looked righteous. They had the look about them. They were the experts in the Mosaic law. They were the experts in the traditional law. They were the experts in external rites and forms of piety and things like fastings and prayers and almsgiving. They were the right people of the day. And Jesus has gone to the home of this righteous man named Simon. But I want you to hear this. Most people do not believe that Simon invited Jesus to dinner because he wanted to honor Jesus, but because he wanted to test Jesus. And the reason why we would say that is because of the way he treats Jesus. He actually dishonors Jesus as a guest rather than honor him. Now, we find the most shocking part of this story. We are told in verse 37 that a woman in that town who lived a sinful life, when she learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, she came there. One of the things, if you want to highlight and write down a note, is that verse 37 tells us that this was a woman who lived a sinful life. In other words, it is written in a past tense. It indicates for us that something has happened in her life, that she is a woman with a sinful reputation, a past life. Something had happened to change her life. And Luke, I think, intentionally leaves out for us what her sinful life was. And I think that the reason he leaves it out is because his emphasis is not on what she has done in the past, but what she is currently becoming, what she is currently doing. And that when she learned that Jesus was at the home of this Pharisee for dinner, she was moved to go and see Jesus. It may very well be, because we have no indication that she had had an encounter with Jesus, that he knew her personally, but it may very well be that out there when Jesus was teaching and during one of the moments of ministry, when something happened, it may very well be that this sinful woman who is at the end of herself, this sinful woman who is brought to a place in her life of desperation, thinking that it's over, there is no hope for her, and then she hears Jesus speak about heaven and about life and about new beginnings. That there, maybe quietly, maybe there in the shadows, she asked to be forgiven. But now she's learned that Jesus is at the home of this Pharisee. He's just right down the road, and she begins to look for something, some possession that she has, and in order to take it to him and to offer some thanks, some offering of gratitude. And she saw this alabaster jar of expensive perfume oil. It quite possibly was the most expensive thing that she owned. And she picked it up. And she made her way to the home of Simon. No one would have welcomed her. She was someone that had been closed off to the kingdom of heaven. And so she would have just slipped in, made her way in. She came up behind Jesus, we're told. And she is overwhelmed by emotion. She hadn't anticipated this moment of deep emotion. She wasn't ready for it, but I sort of picture that she fell to her knees at his feet, and she began to shed tears. The word is that she began to wail, heave. You know, it's an ugly cry. You know what an ugly cry? I mean, it is just, she's heaving with tears. And her tears are like a shower of rain that are falling upon Jesus' feet. And there in an unguarded moment, not thinking about what others might say, she breaks a social code and she lets down her hair. And she begins to wipe her tears off of his feet with her hair. And then she anoints his feet with this perfume oil that would have filled the room with this beautiful, wonderful scent. And then she just begins to kiss the feet of Jesus. Shock. It's a shock to everyone that is there. A shock to everyone that was there, to every guest. No one says anything, but it's shocking. But we hear the words, the thoughts of this Pharisee. And this Pharisee is critical in two ways. First, he is critical of Jesus. See, he didn't see Jesus as the Messiah, but maybe he was an important prophet. But now he is critical of Jesus. He says, if he was truly a prophet, if he was really a prophet, he would know. So he's doubting Jesus. He doesn't believe him. And then the other criticism is of this woman, this sinful woman. For he would know what kind of woman this is that is touching his feet. You see, the criticism is that this is a Jewish woman who has broken the law. She, of her own decision making, chose a life of sin, and she is unworthy and closed off from the kingdom of heaven. And so Jesus follows with a parable. I want you to see this parable. He tells a story. And he calls Simon by name. Simon, I want to tell you a story. And the story is of two men that had borrowed money from a money lender. And one owed 500 denarii. One owed up to 500 days of wages. Just think about what that would be in cost for you. Calculated in a day's wage times 500. One of them owed up to 50 days of wages and salary. And neither man could pay their debt. And we are told, Jesus says, the money lender forgave both debts. And then he asked the question, just listen. He asked the question, which of them will love? This is agapeo. This is the kind of love that God showed when He lavished His love upon us, when He gave us Jesus. This is a love in response. Which of the two showed greater love? And Simon, and you see the word suppose that's put in there. It's a way of saying he grudgingly, because he didn't want to say it. Just like when we are caught up in our own crisis moment of what's happening in front of us, how do we respond to this? He said, I suppose, grudgingly, the one who has been forgiven the greater debt. And it's at that moment Jesus says, you got it. That's it. Aha! It's an aha moment. It's a teachable moment. You have judged correctly Judging was a thing that he did. He judged Jesus. He judged the woman. And now he has judged correctly. If you can get this, then you can get what's happening right in front of you. It's an aha moment. And then he turns their attention toward the woman. And he said, Simon, do you see this woman? Do you see this woman? Do you see not what she was, but do you see what she is becoming? Do you see this woman? Because I think Jesus is uncovering the danger of religious hypocrisy. How religious people can often limit and put roadblocks for people who are wanting to get to the kingdom of heaven. The danger of religious hypocrisy is that often we see the sin rather than the salvation. The religious hypocrisy often sees the problem rather than the potential, often sees the past rather than the future. Simon, do you see this woman? I think Luke wants us to see this woman. Everybody is shocked by what's happening, but do you see what's happening really? Because what follows is, do you see the truth about yourself? You see this woman, but do you see the truth about yourself? Verse 45 and 46. I came into your house, but you did not give me any water to wash my feet. That is quite a dishonor in that day and time. But she wet my feet with her tears. She wiped my feet with her hair. You didn't greet me with a kiss of welcome. But she has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head. By the way, the word for oil is just the most common, cheapest olive oil. But she has poured out most expensive perfume oil. Poured it out. Do you really see who you are in light of who she is? Because then it leads to this really simple application. Now, see here, verse 47, 48, this very simple application, because you have a therefore. Therefore, I tell you, her sins, wherever it happened, wherever it is that she cried out for forgiveness, I tell you, her sins have been forgiven. That is shocking. The debt of her sin, forgiven. As her great love has shown. That's her response. But whoever is forgiven little, they love little, Jesus says. So now here's this passage, and it sets up for us a contrast between two people. I want you to see here. Two people. Contrast between the two that we have been introduced to in this story Luke provides. You have this Pharisee and you have the sinful woman. The Pharisee would have been someone that was seen as in. They got it together. They're righteous. The sinful woman would have been seen as somebody that was out. No hope. Closed off. The Pharisee brought Jesus in order to test him. She went to see Jesus in order to honor him. The Pharisee offered Jesus no water for his feet, but she washed Jesus' feet with her tears. He offered not even the basic, cheapest olive oil, but she poured out the expensive perfume oil that she had. He was forgiven little. She was forgiven much. He's in a crisis of belief like so many others when Jesus says, "Woman, your sins are forgiven you." But looking at her, he says, "Go into peace." He doesn't say go with peace. He doesn't say go with my peace. He says go into peace. The peace of forgiveness. The peace of freedom. The peace of a new life. The peace of a new beginning. The peace of the joy of the Lord. The peace of heaven in her heart. So I want to ask you 3 questions. With this up here, I want to ask you 3 questions. Here's the first question. Of the two, which one are you more, would you say you are more like right now? Of the two, which one best reflects the righteousness of God? Of the two, which one offers us the best example of a follower of Jesus? A disciple. And I ask this question, what would it mean if we chose the example of the woman? What would it mean if we chose her example? Well, it would provide for us an example of how to respond to the forgiveness of Jesus in our lives as we prepare to come into His presence together and worship Him and celebrate Him and lift up His name, and to come with such great debt and sin debt in our lives that we come to lift up the name that's above every name, the one who gave His life that we might have life. It teaches us how to respond to the forgiveness when we come into the presence of the Lord. Provides us an example of how we give of our best self. She thought herself unworthy, so the only thing she had of the most value was what she brought to Jesus, that was a symbol of her own life being laid down before the Lord. And in a way, she is showing herself in complete abandonment. No matter what anyone else thought, she was giving herself, her whole self, to the Lord. Whereas Simon didn't greet Jesus even with a kiss of greeting and welcome. He did not want to be associated with Jesus. She could not stop kissing His feet, a symbol of a servant. She provides us an example of how to go in the peace that He offers. There's so many people, day after day, that feel unworthy. There are so many people that come together in a place like this, or they gather with us online and they feel unworthy. But here is a woman who meets with God's forgiveness, who finds hope and sets an example for all of us of how we can find ourselves before the Lord and to walk in peace with Him. It is so important that we focus on what we are becoming in Him, that we be more concerned about what we are becoming in Him than what we don't do. It is so important because in doing so it increases our confession. You think about Jesus, He broke all these rules, all these regulations that people were so upset about. This woman, she broke all the protocol. She broke so many social codes. But she did whatever it took to get to the presence of Jesus. But the question is, of the two, who is standing right with the Lord? And I think that as a result, this woman is leading the way and is saying to everyone, come, this is the way to the kingdom of heaven. This is the way to the Lord. This is the way to the one who changed my life. We as religious people, we often close off the kingdom of heaven to others. But if we'll become like this woman, we'll be those leading the way to the door of life and the way of heaven. I just want to invite you, if you find yourself as a Pharisee, I want you to know that Jesus is willing to come into your life and to forgive you of your sin. If you find yourself like the sinful person, it doesn't matter what you have done, how far away you are. She was a Jewish woman who got caught up in something. Doesn't matter how far away you are, how lost you are. It's just one step to Him. And I want to invite you, and this time I'm going to ask the band members to come and Darren to come. I'm going to ask that during this time of reflection here, these steps are open if you want to come and pray here where you are. But what is God saying to you? Are you in the way of others, or are you showing the way? What is He saying to you about your life in Him? Do you know Him? Is He Lord? What needs to change? Let Him have His way right now.